Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar in our Top 5 series for Ryerson's alumni and friends. My name is Christian Mehta, and I am the AVP of Engagement at the university. I'm delighted to be your host for this session, and we know you've got a lot on the go, so this is a 30-minute webinar. We'll dive in quickly, but before I introduce our presenter, Shannon Lee Simmons, I just want to highlight a few items from the email you would have received with the link to this webinar. In about 20 minutes, Shannon will be taking your questions. If you have anything you want to ask, please direct that question to Jennifer Hicks using the chat function so she can moderate our flow. The cameras and mics are all off, except for mine and Shannon's, so sending your question to Jennifer directly is the best way to go. Second, after the Q&A, we'll have a short 10-second poll that we'd like for you to complete, please. The poll will help us plan future online learning opportunities for you. We're recording these webinars, so you'll receive an email later with a link so you can watch it again and share it with your network. And finally, if you're on social media, please use hashtag #RUTop5. So now I'd like to introduce today's expert. Not only is she a great friend to Ryerson, but Shannon Lee Simmons is also an award-winning certified financial planner, speaker, chartered investment manager, author, and founder of the New School of Finance. Her two books, Worry-Free Money and Living Debt-Free, are both bestsellers. She's a personal finance writer for the Globe and Mail, as well as CBC Radio's Metro Morning's money columnist, and a financial expert on the Marilyn Dennis Show. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So we are in some very interesting times right now. And today I'm going to talk about the 5 things that you want to do in an emergency situation such as this, or in uncertain times with your finances. And so, yeah, as we know, you can ask questions throughout and then I can answer them later. Just a caveat before we kind of jump in and get started. This situation about all the financial programs out there that I'm going to be talking about today, things are changing every single day. So today we even got new information as of an hour and a half ago that wasn't even relevant or known, yesterday or Friday. So just so you know, everything can continue to change. So what I would like to do today is talk about, here's what we know for sure. Here's what we're hoping for as far as the programs go, and then where you can go for accurate information to stay on top of everything. I think that's the best thing, the best way to help during these uncertain times where things are always on the move. So, okay, if you're in a financial emergency, which I think it's important to identify what that means. So a financial emergency, as far as I'm concerned, is where you unexpectedly lose your income, or you unexpectedly have a massive increase in your financial costs, right? So like those are your more typical ones where it's like the roof caved in and now you have to pay for that and you didn't see it coming and you're not prepared. But either way, your finances are going to take a big blow. So the number one thing that you can do if you've lost your income, which given the COVID-19 pandemic, that is where a lot of the anxiety and the fear is that you've either lost your income or you're afraid you're going to lose your income. And if you're self-employed, maybe you haven't lost all of your income, but you've lost a fraction of it. And what does that mean for you? So I want to talk about what you can do. First things first is to figure out if there's a way that you can get any money coming in at all. So there's this new program called the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB for short. And today, actually April 6th, is the first day that the government is open for business on that. So far we've just known that it's coming, and today you can finally apply for it. So let's talk about what it is, what that means for you if you're self-employed, and if you're not self-employed, or if you've already been laid off and are on EI, and then how to apply for it. So that's the number one thing that you can do, is figure out how to get money continually coming in the door, because the bills we'll talk about in a second. So money coming in the door. So the Canada Emergency Response Benefit it works out to $2,000 a month or $500 a week. And then that goes, and you have to report your income in these 4-week chunks. So there is a website that everyone should be going to on canada.ca, the government COVID-19 Emergency Economic Response Plan. Google that, and then you'll go right to it, and it kind of outlines all of this. And actually, if you want to bookmark that page, I think that's a really good place to get information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And you know that whatever is going on that site, even though it might be a bit jargon heavy, whatever's going on that site is accurate. So bookmarking that page. So you can apply for this on the My CRA or My CRA account today, as of today, but they are doing it by birthday. So today, people who are born January, February, and March can apply, and so on and so forth. And that's all outlined on that website. So what does this mean? So do you qualify? If you earned $5,000 in 2019, that's one of them. You have to be living in Canada and at least 15 years old. And so when we talk about the other qualification of the $5,000 in 2019, some of my clients have said that this, how do they prove that? So I think one of the tips that I would give there is to do your taxes, because if you were self-employed, like if you were an employee, it's a lot easier because you have a T4 that could prove that. But if you were self-employed, you may not have that ability to prove that. So right now it might be an honor system that you're applying for it. But I have a feeling that they're going to be really stringent, and they might be reviewing a lot of the applications later on once this is over. So making sure that you have all your paperwork in order. So you might want to do your taxes right away if you're self-employed to prove that. Or if you were earning EI or parental benefits or anything, you'll have a T4E for that. So that's how you prove that $5,000. And then you also, this is the tricky thing, and this is where there's a lot of sticking points. You also have to make sure that you have been without an income or not working for at least 14 consecutive days in a 4-week period for your initial CERB application. So let's break down what that actually means. So there are 7 different cycles of this, because this program goes, you can apply for this all the way through from March 15th all the way through until October. So there are 7 4-week cycles that you can cycle through. So it doesn't mean that if you apply for, like, let's say that you're still earning income and then 3 weeks from now you lose your job. That doesn't mean that you had to apply now and that's it. So it's not like you have to get laid off today or stop earning money from a small business today. You can always apply for this down the road. And for your very first application, the first time that you apply for it, you only have to show that you have not earned money for 14 days. So if you are a person who is employed and you get laid off, then 14 days later you can apply and you'll qualify. You don't have to wait a full 4 weeks. And if you're self-employed and business goes belly up, and 14 days later you can apply no matter where you are in that cycle. But then to get the money after that first cycle, so that's your first cycle, so you qualify. Then going forward, if you want to still stay on the CERB, then you have to not expect to earn any income at all and no work, period, full stop. That's the rules right now. So the first application, only 14 days. After that, no money at all in any 4-week period. So that's been frustrating for a lot of people who are self-employed, or people who are employed but have maybe got on reduced hours. So maybe their boss said, hey, I can't keep you on full time. Our business is going, down the hill, but I can keep you on for 10 hours a week. How about that? So this program, as it stands right now, does not allow for you to do that. So you can't kind of earn money from your business even at a reduced rate, and you can't work reduced hours and still qualify. It's kind of an all or nothing thing after that first 14 consecutive day period in that first application. So one thing that I would say is that today the Prime Minister announced at 11 o'clock during his address right now, he did say that he sees those holes, which is very good, and that they are actively working on new legislation for the CERB to promote people who are working on a reduced income or reduced hours or potentially self-employed. So they see you, and we are all very hopeful that that will come through. So my big tip there is that if you haven't earned income right now since March 27th, so that would mean that you qualify as of today. If you haven't earned income in the last 14 days, apply, because you qualify for at least this first round of $2,000. And then let's wait and see what happens over the next 4 weeks, because the legislation could completely change by that time. And then you would qualify even if you were working on reduced hours or if you had self-employment income coming in. So as long as for this first time, if you haven't earned money in 14 days, you qualify, and maybe that's the only one that you qualify for, but I have a feeling they're going to change the legislation to help, because they acknowledge that that is an issue. So rest assured, I fully believe that that is coming. So that's the first thing that you do. If you are a person who's already applied for EI, and I'm getting this question a lot too, so somebody who might have been laid off earlier and they applied, you do not need to reapply today or whenever. Your application, they see your application, and you're going to be swooped into this CERB program for the 16 weeks that it is. And then if you still can't return to work after that, that's when your regular EI will kick in. So someone who never qualified for EI before now has an opportunity to qualify for at least 16 weeks. But if that person, after 16 weeks, they don't have any extra money coming in because they never qualified for EI, whereas somebody who had employment and paid into the EI program, well, then that's when your regular benefits would kick in. So you do not need to reapply. You are already going to be put into the program. So the only people that need to be applying today are people that are born January, February, March, who haven't earned money in 14 days and have not already submitted an application. Okay, so I know that's a lot, but let's just assume that you now make $2,000 a month. So that benefit is taxable, but they have said that they're not going to tax it at the source like they do regular EI. So you're going to get the full $2,000 or $500 a week. I'm not entirely sure if it's coming in weekly or if it's coming in like $2,000 every 4 weeks. I have a feeling it'll be $2,000 every 4 weeks that'll come in. So you'll have to budget that. And that's tip number 2. So if you've got $2,000 coming in, that's tip number 1, is to make sure you get as much money coming in as you can with the government programs. The second thing that you want to do is make sure that you're paying attention to your expenses. And so you want to try to live within that $2,000 to the best of your ability. And if you have a partner and you're both on CERB, that'd be the $4,000. And I know that that might sound impossible or seem impossible for a lot of people. So I'm not saying that to be flippant. What I just mean is, essentially, if you have $2,000 coming in and $2,500 going out, which is basic living expenses, the bills you have to pay, roof over your head, basic grocery, because no one's going out right now, no one's doing a lot of stuff. But let's say that you have $2,000 coming in, $2,500 going out, then you're going to have a $500 shortfall. And so that's going to go in, that's going to be funded either by eating into your savings or using debt. So if you've got savings, it's a little bit less worrisome. If you don't have savings, that's when you want to be careful, because yes, some people are going to have to go into debt for this. We'll talk about that in a second, but you want to try to avoid it as much as possible. So taking advantage of the, if you have a student loan still, there's going to be a federal student loan. You're going to be interest-free for 6 months. There also are the mortgage deferral programs that the banks are offering. We can talk about that in question period if you want to, but with the mortgage deferral, it gives you up to 6 months deferral, but you do have to pay it back with interest. So they basically give you a break for 6 months, and then they kind of roll in what you should have paid over those 6 months into your mortgage, which means you are going to pay interest on it later. So it's a great program if you're up against the wall and it's credit card debt that you're probably going to go into, because your mortgage will at least be a lower interest rate, but not something to jump all over if you do have the ability to pay your mortgage. The other thing that to keep in mind is that the banks, as of yesterday or as of Friday, all came out and said that they are going to lower their interest rates on their credit cards. Some banks are going as far as allowing people to miss minimum payments for a month. So please get in touch with your bank and see what programs are available to you, because each one of the banks is doing it a bit differently. So because it's not coming from the government necessarily, but they are doing stuff to help to alleviate some of the burden on there. So do check in with your bank. So you want to figure out what's coming in, lower what's going out as much as possible, so that you can find that nugget, that shortfall. Because when we get to tip 4, that's when we're going to say, do we use savings, do we use debt, and how do we do that effectively? So number 3, you also want to make sure that your taxes are done, which I already kind of said for the self-employed people, but I think everybody should be making sure that last year's taxes are done, and that you've applied for the CCB, which is the Canada Child Benefit, if you have children, because there are 2 more benefits that are coming. The CCB, Child Care Benefit, $300 per child is coming out in May. So you just want to make sure that you've applied for the CCB and that your taxes from last year are done. And if you do qualify for the GST, those are those quarterly checks that have been coming in, then you'll get an extra $300 and potentially even $150 extra per child. So again, making sure that you're up to date on your taxes, making sure that you've applied for those things to see if there's extra money that can come in to help offset some of this is really, really, really helpful. Okay, so now that we have, so that's tip number 3. So tip number 4 is to figure out whether or not you cash in investments or you or use your savings or you use debt. And I think that this is like a big question that I get a lot. So number 1, if we have a shortfall, define what it is. So in our example today, we're going to use $500 as our shortfall. And let's say that this goes on for 4 months. So that is $2,000 that you are going to be short. Okay, so 500, 500, 500, 500. For some families, I know that this shortfall is going to be more like 10,000 or 12,000. But for the simplicity of math today, we're just going to use $2,000, $500 a month for 4 months. And hopefully hopefully this doesn't go on longer than that. So if we have that shortfall, where do we take it from and how? Ideally, the number 1 place that you want to be taking any sort of emergency money from is an emergency account. I super understand that not everybody has an emergency account. This is something that we can't get in the DeLorean and go back in time and make an emergency account for us. So if you have one, kudos, this is the time to use it. So my definition of an emergency savings account is a bank account that is pretty boring. So probably like a high interest rate savings account, maybe earning 1% if it's or maybe 2 if it's maybe an online bank or something like that, but it's 100% liquid, which means that anytime you can take the money, and the max is going to be like a 2 or 3 day waiting period if it's not necessarily at your home bank to get the money. You don't have to sell any investments, and it's just sitting there waiting for you to have an emergency. So if you have money like that, that's the first place that you want to take it. So if you had $2,000 sitting on the sidelines, you can breathe easy. You're not going to go into debt. You don't have to cash in investments when they're at a big low after the stock market has corrected and corrected and corrected. So that's really good news. So you're kind of done. Wait till this is over. You weathered the storm, and then keep rebuilding that afterwards, right? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is if you have to make a decision between debt and cashing in your investments, this is when there's a little bit of an art versus a science. So there's no definite answer here. Everybody wants a black and white statement from me, and I can't give that to you because everyone's situation is really different. So what I would say is this: don't ever go into credit card debt. That's the tough one. Even though the banks are lowering it, they're lowering it to like 10, 12%. That's still really high. So really the conversation we're having is a low, cheap line of credit that's probably linked to your home. So it's got a low, like a HELOC or something, which is a home equity line of credit. So it's got a low interest rate, or cashing in your investments. I would not take money from the RRSP right now, because if you cash in the investments, not only are you gonna lock in a loss, but then you're going to have to pull the money out of the RSP. So you're going to lose a chunk of it to tax as well. So credit cards and RRSPs, let's take those off the table for a second if we can. Those are very last resort type of situations. So really we're having a conversation about really, good interest rate lines of credit versus cashing in investments that have taken a nosedive in a tax-free savings account. Because in the tax-free savings account, when you cash it in and you take the money, like if you sell your investments within the TFSA and take it out to your checking account, you don't have to pay tax on that if you happened to have a gain. So that's why I would choose a tax-free savings account over the RRSP if we have to do this. So what I say is, my big thing is, going into debt during an emergency is kind of like kicking you while you're financially down already. It can leave like a scarring mark and a little bit of like an emotional frustration of, like, I'm bad with money and I'm in trouble here, and it can really add to a lot of anxiety. So if that's you, what you might want to do is calculate it. Okay, how fast can I repay this? Because that's the really big question when you're talking about a line of credit. Because if you're going to go into this $2,000 worth of debt that we're talking about, get yourself through, not cash in your investments. And then once you go back to work, the cash flow that you'll be making will be enough money that you could pay it off in 3 to 4 months. I say use the line of credit, let your investments ride out this downturn, and don't panic. But if you're in a situation where the amount of debt that you'd be going into was $12,000, that's not something you're going to be able to clean up probably over 3 to 4 months. You might be in a bigger situation for a lot longer, and the interest is going to be there for quite some time, and the minimum payment on that debt is going to be quite significant. So what you might want to do then is think about taking some of your money from a tax-free savings account, even if it's invested. So really it comes down to a question of, do I pay all this interest and all this and lose my income to this minimum payment at a time when my income is already low to try to get through, and then have this kind of financial hangover from this thing for quite some time, which takes an emotional toll? Or do I just bite the bullet and take what I need from my investments? So let's say that you had, $30,000 in your nest egg. That's what you've got. Maybe there's some sort of balance. Maybe you can take a small portion. Maybe you can take 5,000 or something like that from the tax-free savings account. Yes, you're taking a loss on that, but by taking that $5,000, you can feel a little bit more in control. We can pay for our bills at first by that money and hope that we don't go into line of credit debt until much later. And so the reason I'm saying this back and forth is that I can't give you like that's it, sell it, take it all, fund your life with your investment account, because everybody's situation is really different. And it really depends on, once life gets back to normal, what does your cash flow look like? I think that's what you need to be paying attention to in order to say, I'm either going to take this from my investments and take the loss on my investments here and lock that in, which is, it's not ideal. Or I'm going to take this on debt and pay interest, also not ideal. But I trust that I can pay that off later. And, there is something to be said about wellness and like your financial well-being in that. And last but not least, tip number 5 would just be like what to do going forward. So once we're through this, you want to be paying off any debt that you did take on. You want to be making that a priority. And I think that I would stop doing payments to RRSP and TFSA to pay down debt. So if you have to like regroup, and RESP if you have kids, so stop those for a short period of time. Once your income comes back, shuffle money over to the debt that might have happened during this period of time. And then after that, once the debt is gone, start building an emergency account. Because this won't happen. If this happens or something happens to you again, next time you'll feel so much more in control and prepared. And that's my 5 tips.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Shannon. That's incredible. So much to learn from that and apply to the current situation we're in. Listen, we have so many questions in the chat here, and I'm going to we have about 10. And we have about 8 minutes. So here we go. Are you ready to dive in?
Very quickly. Yeah.
That's amazing. So this one's from Roseanne. What if you haven't been working because retail stores are closed, but you still got paid up until last week? Can I still apply for CERB, or do I have to wait the 14 days?
So the application process, so that's a great question. You are still going to qualify. You won't qualify until 14 days from now. So this application period for you is likely closed. And so if you go to that website that I was talking about, canada.ca, and then you if you want to Google Canada's Economic Response Plan COVID-19, they actually have the application windows. So there's period 1, there's period 2, there's period 3, and they actually put the dates out. So it sounds to me like you would probably, so if you earned up until, April 1st, then you'll qualify as of April 14th. And April, this is going to sound confusing. I hope that you're following. So period 1 is over on the 11th of April. So you won't be able to apply up till April 11th, but then period 2 opens for applications on April 12th. So you will be in period 2 and you will qualify. It sounds to me like they're going to be backdating it, but again, that has it, like they've said it. I don't see the words on the government website, but that's the feeling, that's the words that the PM has used. So I think that you would still be backdated. So you can try applying, but it's likely, like, go to my CRA on the month of your birthday this week. So go to that website, see when your birthday is, apply during that window, but don't be surprised if they say, hey, you can't apply till April 12th. That's what my gut instinct says based on how they've mapped this thing out. And I think that personally it's so that they can tame who's coming into the program so that the system doesn't crash. So if you're not even gonna qualify for another like 2 weeks, don't apply so that we don't overload the system. That's why I think that they're doing these windows.
Great, thank you for that. Another question from Elizabeth. How long should this planning cover? One, or should my planning cover 1, 2, or more months? Will this be over in June, Shannon? I think there are enough questions.
Oh my, well, let me check my crystal ball. Yeah.
That one.
I wish I had a crystal ball. So what I've been doing for clients financially is I've been planning for 3 to 4 months. And the reason I'm saying 3 to 4 months is that that's how long the CERB is lasting for. So that program is 16 weeks long. So that means that we're all globally, nationally hoping that this is over by then, because there is no plan after that that we know of yet. So I think that planning and preparing for 3 to 4 months makes a lot of sense.
Great, thank you. We probably have time for a couple of more questions. This one is from Melissa. What are some good investment options to consider at this time? Something with more of a short or a midterm return?
So that's an interesting question. So I would say a short or midterm time horizon is actually how I would rephrase the question, because returns are not guaranteed. So we can't know that if you invest in something that's for a short-term time horizon, it's going to do better than something for the long run. What I will say is this. There's a term called buy the dip, which is basically like it's not from Warren Buffett, but like, it means that when Warren Buffett has this famous saying that says, be fearful when people are greedy and be greedy when people are fearful, which, capitalism.com. But what his point, I know, but his point is that when markets tank like this, there are opportunities to invest when things are at low prices. The whole point of investing is buy low, sell high. That is the name of the game. So if things are low right now and you have cash that is not invested, you have an opportunity to invest right now while things are low, which sets you up potentially, if history repeats itself, to ride this thing up when the market rebounds on the other side. And actually that could work in your favor. So what I would say is, number one, if you're going to invest, make sure that your cash flow is covered for the next little bit of time, that you have no debt, that you've got an emergency account, and that you feel fairly confident that you're not going to need this money for a very long time. Because if you invest everything tomorrow, we have no idea if the economic fallout from this thing on the stock markets is going to last a year, 3 months, 2 years, 4 years. We don't know. These are unprecedented times. And unlike the 2008, 2009 crash, businesses could be closing we have all these packages that are going on, but if this goes on longer than this 3 or 4 months, like so many personal businesses could be closing too. So we could be facing an extended period, or it could all bounce back in 3 months. That's legit. It's unprecedented. So I do believe that in the long run, the market will rebound once people feel confident again in what's coming in and what's going out. So making sure that whatever you are investing is for the long term. And I'm always a big fan of choosing the right account. So a tax shelter, like a tax-free savings account or an RRSP, and then buying into a diversified portfolio that has it, and making sure that your time horizon is long. I cannot stress that enough.
Well, listen, we have one more room for one more question, maybe. We're getting a lot in the chat here about summer and summer jobs. A couple of PhD students are asking, and I'm sure others are wondering what they're going to be doing this summer when they're competing against those who are already unemployed and trying to grasp onto those coveted jobs. Do you have any advice or are there any financial benefits that folks going into summer need to be thinking about or considering?
So the PM just spoke exactly to this specific situation this morning. Again, without actual information, but I see you and we are coming up with a plan. So he specifically said, students will be wondering, who just graduated, will be wondering about summer jobs or lack thereof. We are working on programs right now to assist there. So I have no idea what that could mean, but I think that you should take a little bit of solace in the fact that that is a specific situation that the government of Canada is aware of, and they're actively working towards what that could mean. Hopefully, like who knows what that might look like? Is it money coming in, or is it a break in tuition? Well, who knows, right? But I definitely think that they see you, and I hope that answer comes soon for you. Okay. I'm sorry I don't have more on that.
No, that's fine. And that's clearly this is an evolving situation. And as news comes out, we'll have more opportunities to perhaps consider some new options that weren't on the table before. Shannon, thank
Absolutely.
you so much. This is so valuable.
Oh,
And we have so many more questions in the chat. I wish we could get to them all, but we'll be sure to collect them and send them your way. And maybe if there's something that you can answer, we can share it in a different format
yeah, sure. I
coming
mean,
days. But listen, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. You're a great friend to this university.
well, thanks so much for having me. And we're all in this together. So anything that I can do to help, I'm super happy to.